And good afternoon. It's episode 80 of Thursdays with Charlie on the 9th of December, 2021. Good to have everybody back here with us. Good to be sitting down with you today. I had a wonderful weekend. I'll tell you a little bit more about it over the coming weekend when we're at Masses. But I got to spend the weekend with Dracula, which is kind of unusual to do. Actually, one of my friends plays Dracula at Universal Studios, and he came by and spent the weekend with me. We had a really good time and talked a lot about Universal Studios and the work he does there, and the way people sometimes react when Dracula walks up behind them and surprises them. It's a lot of fun. So I had a really, really good weekend. Tomorrow night is our Christmas party. Be over at the Riverside in the Starview Room. Looking forward to that very, very much. It's going to be a nice turnout. We have about 370, 380 people coming and looking forward to a wonderful time. Surprise of surprises, somehow our word and songbooks got through the supply chain crisis and were delivered this week. So at Masses this weekend, if you'd like to buy the Word and Songbook, it's large print for the readings. It's got all the music we're going to be using all this year. It goes from the first Sunday of Advent, which we've already had in 2021, till the last Sunday of the year, which is the Feast of Christ the King, and that will be at the end of 2022. So these will be $5 each. You're welcome to bring them back and forth. They're yours, so please don't leave them in church. And somehow they managed to get a few hundred of them through this supply chain crisis, and we're really glad to have them. And they'll be available for everybody who comes to church over this weekend until they're sold out. And if need, we'll try to order some more, but I think we should be covered for that. There are still a few copies of The Word Among Us left on the magazine rack here at the church. If you stop by the church, please feel free to take one of those home. Those are free, and we look forward to them being a big help to our people. The 2022 calendars are ordered, and they're still trapped in the supply chain crisis. So hopefully, maybe they'll even make it before the end of the year, and that would be really good. Now, a really important announcement about this weekend, the third weekend of Advent, December 11th and 12th, the Saturday and Sunday. The Riverside is having the Nutcracker. The Anaheim Ballet is coming once again to do that ballet. And they do afternoon performances both on Saturday and Sunday, so we're not able to be at the Riverside this weekend. We will have our regular Mass schedule, but all of the Masses on December 11th and 12th will be here at the church. So we will have the 4 p.m. and the 6 p.m. on Saturday afternoon here at the church, and we will have the 8 a.m., the 10 a.m., and the 12 noon Masses on Sunday here at the church. Please spread that word. We'll have it up on our website. It'll be on our phone messaging for people who call after hours. We'll tell people that if they call, but please spread it around. This weekend only, all of the Masses, regular times, will be up at the church. And of course, as I said, we'll have the word and song booklets available. Looking forward to that. In our bulletin this weekend, there'll be two important announcements. One, there's a form that if you'd like to fill out and make a donation towards the Christmas flowers and decorations, you most certainly may. You can write down the name of anyone living or departed whom you would like to have remembered. Those names will be kept on the altar during the Christmas season. We're not going to publish the names, but we will have them on the altar during the Christmas season. That announcement will be in our bulletin for the next 2 weekends. And also in our bulletin for the next 2 weekends will be the schedule for Christmas and New Year's this year. As you know, Christmas and New Year's Day, so December 25th and January 1st, fall on a Saturday this year. That means Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve both fall on Fridays. So we had to adjust the schedule a bit to take that into account. Christmas Eve will be Friday, December 24th, and we're going to make available 3 Masses for Christmas Eve. We'll have a 4 p.m. Mass at the Riverside that will be able to accommodate unlimited numbers of people, really, of those who would be interested in coming, the first Mass of Christmas. We will also have a 6 p.m. Mass at the church and an 8 p.m. Mass at the church on Friday, Christmas Eve. We're not going to do any later Masses. People, I don't think, are going to be out in droves, and still with the virus hanging over some heads, people will probably not want to be out really late that night. And it's also probably kinder to the priests, the deacons, and our music people, as well as the other ministers of the Mass, not to have a midnight Mass this year when it was really the most poorly attended in terms of numbers. We figure we might make it more accessible for people by doing the 4 at the Riverside, the 6 and the 8 p.m. Mass at the church, Christmas Eve. Now, Saturday, December 25th, is Christmas Day, and so we'll do the 8 a.m. Mass at the church as we would on a normal Sunday schedule, and we'll do the 10 a.m. and the 12 noon down at the Riverside in Don's Celebrity Theater. That's Saturday, December 25th, Christmas Day. There will not be any afternoon Masses on Christmas Day. So on Saturday, December 25th, there'll be no 4 p.m. or no 6 p.m. Mass. We're going to celebrate the Sunday Masses for the Feast of the Holy Family, which is a Sunday, and so Mass attendance is required at 8 a.m., at 10 a.m., and at 12 noon. So the 8 a.m. Mass on Sunday, December 26th, will be at the church. The 10 and the 12, as usual, will be in Don's Celebrity Theater at the Riverside. The 1st of January, it also falls on a Saturday, January 1st. It is normally a celebration of Mary, the Mother of God, and it's a holy day, but when the church says when it falls on a Saturday, it is no longer a holy day of obligation. We will celebrate the first Mass of the new year in honor of Mary, Mother of God, at 9 a.m. at the church on New Year's Day. There will be no Masses on the evening of New Year's Eve, just the normal Friday 8 a.m. Mass on December 31st. January 1st, Saturday, 9 a.m. Mass at the church. There will be no afternoon Masses on January 1st, so no 4 p.m., no 6 p.m. It's New Year's Day. People will be celebrating with family and friends. The next day, January 2nd, is the celebration of the Epiphany. It's a regular Sunday, so there will be an 8 a.m. Mass at the church, and then 10 a.m. and 12 noon down at the Riverside. So please, those schedules will be available on the website. They'll also be in the bulletin for the next 2 weekends. Please make sure that they're spread as far and wide as you can. People need that information. We remind you again, all Masses this weekend, December 11th and 12th, are here at the church. We look forward to seeing you, and Word and Song books will be available for purchase there. Now, a lot of people have been asking about confessions prior to Christmas. We are kind of unique in that we hear confessions. I hear confessions before every Mass, weekday Mass, weekend Mass throughout the year. So we don't usually have a buildup of people. Plus, when the spring, when Father Michael Moore comes, a lot of people take advantage of that for confession before the season of Lent. So we will continue to hear confessions about 20 minutes before each Mass for the next 2 weeks. That means the Mass is at the Riverside, the Mass is here at the church. weekday, Saturday, Sunday, about 20 minutes before each Mass. Just come and you can see me, and we'll be taking care of confessions. If those times are not convenient for you, although they should be since you'd be coming to one of those Masses anyway, if they're not convenient for some reason, you can call up and make an appointment, and we'll hear confessions at other times. I do not intend to hear confessions on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day. I want to be free to greet our people, to see our visitors, to celebrate with them. So please take care of the confessions prior to December 24th. We do make them more available than any other parish in the area, so it should be accessible to everybody. Funny, when we talk about confessions, I always remember back when I was a kid, the pastor in my parish, which was Queen of Peace, North Arlington, was Monsignor Peter B. O'Connor. Monsignor O'Connor was a very large man. He probably weighed close to 280, 290, 300 pounds. He did not fit into the confessional that people were commonly using then. You remember those little doored rooms where the priest would sit in the middle and the person coming to confession would kneel on either side in a little closed-off room. Well, Monsignor didn't fit into the confessional, so he would regularly hear confessions sitting on what we called the gospel bench, the chair where the priest sat during the Mass. He would be out in the middle of the sanctuary by the altar, and before the days of face-to-face confession being normal, Monsignor was there because that's where he could fit. It was funny that a number of adults didn't go to him for confession, but almost every kid in the parish did, because we liked the idea that it was out in the open. We liked the idea that there was plenty of light. We could sit next to Monsignor and just talk with him. Confessions were a very normal part of life. There was not that fear of the dark room or being separated from family and not being able to see anybody. So I grew up with a very positive image towards confession, and I'm very glad that I did. When the topic of confession comes up, one of the things that comes up with it is the idea, well, what do I say? What do I say? And everyone pretty much knows the form. You begin with, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." And then you say how long it's been since your last confession. Is it a week or a month or a couple of months? Or is it even a longer time than that? That gives the priest an idea of your familiarity with the ritual as well as the frequency of the sins. So if you say that you do something every day that's wrong, well, it's nice to know whether it's been a week since you've been doing that, or a month, or a couple of years that you've been doing whatever the sin is every day. And so it gives the priest a little more insight into the person coming to confession. And then after you tell how long it's been since your last confession, you would then recount the sins that you want to confess. And this is where some people have a problem. Most sins, I've always felt, are habitual. So people tend to confess the same sins over and over again. That's not abnormal. That's kind of the way it is. We sin generally in the same ways throughout much of our adult lives, and during our childhood years, we tend to repeat the same sins that we would be confessing then as well. But there are things called an examination of conscience, which have become popular over the years. And some of the great saints have advocated for people actually going through a list of things prior to going to confession so that you'd be ready to look at your life in terms of perhaps the great virtues of faith, hope, and charity, perhaps the 10 Commandments, perhaps what's called the precepts, the rules of the church, and to just kind of get an idea where you stand vis-a-vis those things and your practice of the Catholic faith. Two saints that stand out particularly, St. Ignatius of Loyola recommended that every adult once a day go actually through your life and just see how well you're living up to your faith. St. Alphonsus Liguori recommended that it maybe not be done that frequently, but that you do kind of look at your life and you prepare for going to confession. I think that idea of preparation, it's kind of surprising sometimes people will come into confession and they'll start with, I don't know what to say. Well, that should have been solved before you came to confession. You should know what you wanted to get off your chest, what you wanted to rid yourself of. So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to look at a simple examination of conscience. This is by no means not the only one. There are many. There are probably hundreds of them available. If you were to go online and just look up examination of conscience for Catholics or Catholic examination of conscience, you could find many, many of them. And some of them are written very elaborately. Some of them are written very simply. Some of them are written in the form of questions to ask yourself. Some of them are written in terms of things to read and then reflect silently. It doesn't really matter. And I suggest that, a variety of them probably comes in handy for a person. So the one I'm going to use today is based on the Ten Commandments, the basic moral law of the church and really of society as a whole, the Ten Commandments. This is not the only way to do it, and nor is it the most exhaustive way to do it. It's just one of the many ways to do it, and I suggested perhaps it will be helpful, and perhaps you might get interested enough that you'd want to look up others, or you'd like to reflect back on this one for a while. And so we look at each of the Ten Commandments, and we look at how we have lived up in the form of our Catholic practice of the faith with each of these commandments. And so the first commandment, I am the Lord your God, you shall not have strange gods before me. Now, most of us are not going to run out and worship a tree or worship an idol. We're not going to do that. That goes way, way back in history. But we might want to think of how much we give God that first place in our life. Is there anything that even approaches taking the place of God, becoming more important in our life than God? And we might want to reflect on that. Do we ever let anything, any activity, whether it be sports or something more intellectual, whether it be the practice of making money, whether in business or as a hobby, do any of these things interfere with God's place as the most important in our life? Do we ever consider things like, well, I'm going to go to a fortune teller because I'm going to find out what's really going to happen in the future? That's contrary to God's belief, our belief in God, that God is the one who controls the future, and we're not privy to know it. That's why it's in the future. We'll find out as it happens. Do we ever tamper with things? Do we ever get so superstitious? Oh, I don't mean things like, oh, it's Friday the 13th. Wow, that's bad luck. People say that all the time. But if you start saying, well, I'm not going to go out of my house on Friday the 13th, that's carrying it a bit too far. You're letting that have a place in your life that it really shouldn't have. So the first commandment, have I ever let anything take the place of God in my life over the period of time that I'm confessing? The second commandment, do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember, years ago, there was that beautiful practice of every time we heard the name of Jesus, we would make a slight bow of our head, just to remind ourselves that that name is special. Some people carried it over to be that you would bow your head every time you heard the name of Mary, even though she's not God, but she's so closely associated with Jesus, the Mother of God, that we would give her that respect. The name of God is not something that should be used as part of a curse or as part of an element of surprise. It should be reserved for prayer and said respectfully. In Orthodox Judaism, you would never even dare write the word God. If you notice, sometimes you'd see in a Jewish writing, they would, if they were writing in English, you'd see the word, the letter G, and then a space or a dash, and then the letter D, because they felt they should not even write the word God out for fear of that being a disrespect. I think it's a beautiful practice and an idea there. But how do we use God? And then, of course, the opposite side of that, do we use God frequently in our prayers? Do we say the name of God or the name of Jesus or the name of Mary? Do we say it with respect? And do we use it frequently? The third commandment, remember to keep holy the Sabbath day or the Lord's day. Now, in ancient Judaism, where the commandments were given, that was Saturday. In the Christian dispensation, because of the resurrection of Jesus on Sunday, it's on a Sunday. Do we observe Sunday properly? Now, Sunday, we believe, can extend to even Saturday evening, as the Jewish tradition had it, that days start at sundown the day before. But the idea is that once a week we're called to worship God by attending Mass. And that means physically being there. The dispensation that was given during the pandemic was an exception, a serious exception to the normal rule. Catholics go to church every weekend. That means Saturday night Mass or Sunday morning Mass. One is not better than the other. When it came out originally, I know people said that, well, the Saturday night was only for people who couldn't go on Sunday. It was an exception. They would be allowed to go Saturday. It's not really viewed like that anymore. Saturday is just as good as Sunday for the evening worship. The idea is that it be consistent, that you be there and worship. And then, how are you there? I remember I had a friend named Tommy DiNardo. Tommy was married and had a couple of children, and he used to love to tell the story of how they would be trying to get everybody dressed and everybody ready at home and everybody out in the car and get to church, and they'd come running in to make the 10 o'clock Mass and sometimes just barely make it on time. Maybe a little planning. Do we plan to get to Mass before it begins? Do we plan to stay until the end of Mass? People shouldn't be running out of the Mass ahead of the priest. They should be at least coming out after the priest, if not after the end of the closing hymn. But they shouldn't be coming into Mass after the priest either. Of course, there's going to be cases where that happens. Cars break down. Traffic grows up where you did not expect it. Things happen. But normally, you should be there before the priest starts down the aisle, and you should leave after the priest has left. We stay for the Mass. What about distractions? Do we actually turn off our phones during Mass, unless we're using them for the Mass? I know people who have the Mass text on their phone, and so they find that easier than to use a missalette. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But if you're having a chat with your friend, or if you're reading text messages during Mass, or if you're looking up websites, no, that's not the intention. And the idea that you be prepared coming to Mass and prepare to allow enough time. Certainly in this modern day, there's very few places where Masses are running more than 45 minutes, 50 minutes at the most. Very few places go any longer than that. And we're saying that Catholics have an obligation to do that, at least that once a week. Now, again, there are going to be times when it's not possible. God does not hold you to do something impossible, but he does hold you to doing things that are possible on a regular basis. So if you don't go to Mass when you could, that's a problem. When you don't go to Mass and you couldn't have gone to Mass, that's not an issue. The fourth commandment, remember to honor your father and your mother. The Church has always taken that to mean not only father and mother literally, but also those in authority, those who have the authority of parents over us in the form of teachers, in the form of police, let us say, those figures that are in that place. And in fact, we can even extend it to those who are elders to us. Do we have a certain respect for people just because they're older and that they deserve that? Maybe they don't move as fast. Maybe they don't have as much physical strength. But take that into an account. That might mean, in some cases, physical or financial support for parents. We all know children who have taken care of their parents during sickness, during financial difficulties, and have helped. Maybe there's other obligations we owe when we're a student in a school, to the teacher who's in charge of the classroom, to the administration running the group. When there are legitimate authorities over us, as in the case of police or military, if we're in the service, those deserve respect because of their position. It's not necessarily respect that's there because of anything else at its most basic level. It's because authority has a place in our lives. The fifth commandment, you shall not kill. Well, obviously that's going to rule out things like murder, but it also affects things like suicide. It affects things like abortion, because abortion is murder. It's killing an innocent life. And so we need to be aware that we don't want to commit those sins. Now, I would imagine that most people coming into confession over the years, have not committed murder in the sense of shooting or knifing or killing another person. But what about other things that we might do? Tearing down a person's reputation, depriving a person of livelihood, eating or drinking to excess so that we're harming our own lives, smoking to excess when we know we're harming our own lives, driving while drunk, which harms or potentially harms not only our own life, but the lives of others. What about dealing with illegal drugs? Not only taking them, but abusing them, abusing prescription drugs if we're legally entitled to them, but the amount in which we take them and use them and depend on them. Well, think about that. That's all in terms of taking care of our own physical nature, our own physical bodies, not in any way, even over time, killing ourselves or injuring the lives of others. It has an effect on the way we drive, the way we observe traffic laws. Do we follow them with the idea of preserving not only our own life, but the lives of those around us? That all comes under the fifth commandment. Now, the examination of conscience that I am using, it combines a couple of the commandments. It combines the sixth and the ninth commandments because they deal with similar things. And so the sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery, and the ninth commandment, do not covet your neighbor's wife. It all has to do with sexual morality. Marriage is sacred, so Catholics marry within the church. If your marriage is not recognized in the church or was not done within the church, that's something that needs to be taken care of before you can approach the sacraments of Holy Communion or even of confession. A priest cannot forgive you for being in an illicit marriage. It has to be rectified. And so please, that those are questions that need to be taken up with your parish priest. Also, dating and relationships between men and women in dating come under these commandments. Dealing with people who are married, a divorce comes under this commandment. Unfortunately, divorces sometimes happen. The divorce itself is not sinful. It's sometimes the only way that a civil situation can be taken care of. But divorce does not give a Catholic the right to remarry. You are still in that marriage. You promise to be faithful till death do you part. So that needs to be looked at seriously. There is a process called annulment where you could look at that and see if that can be annulled, but it doesn't mean that every marriage can be annulled. And there are ways and methods of behavior that are proper to single people, and ways and methods of behavior that are proper to married people with your own spouse and not with someone else's spouse. This examination of conscience combines the 7th and the 10th commandments because they deal with similar issues. The 7th commandment, you shall not steal, and the 10th commandment, do not covet anything that your neighbor owns. I like the word covet. The word covet has an interesting meaning behind it. It's a wanting of something to an unreasonable amount or an exaggeration. You want something so badly that you would do anything for it. Think about that. There should be very few things in life that we would do anything for, because anything involves everything. Just keep that in mind. You should never, for instance, covet a pizza. No pizza in the world is worth coveting it. You should never covet some possession, some thing. It's never worth anything in life. It's worth something, but it's not worth anything. And stealing can happen in a number of ways. Obviously, things like shoplifting would be stealing. Taking something that doesn't belong to you would be stealing. Looting, running amok in a store and robbing it for any reason like that would be considered against this commandment. It is stealing, whether you do it in a group or do it as an individual. But wanting something so excessively that it becomes an overbearing thing in your mind, that you begin to plot to find ways to get it away from someone else, to not let them have it or enjoy it because you want it so badly. Those attitudes can build up within you and can lead you to do things that hopefully you would never normally want to do. And the last one we'll cover is the 8th commandment. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, the basic trait of this would be, do not lie. People should expect that we would tell the truth. And that means whether we're under oath, and we're in a court of law, or we're just speaking to them. There's not a big difference between what people call a white lie or a big black lie. It doesn't really matter. It's a lie. And people gradually, get into the habit. You notice if you tell one lie that you find yourself trying to support it later on by telling another lie. It tends to lead people away from truth. And once people decide that you're not telling the truth all the time, it becomes difficult for them to believe the truth when you are telling it, because they've caught you in so many lies. It's very difficult to restore that element of trust when somebody has lied. Now, that's the basic 10 Commandments. It's a basic examination of conscience. It's not exhaustive, it's not complete, but it is one way of looking at our lives. And I hope maybe it has been a little bit helpful to you to go over it. You can consider attitudes, you can consider virtues, you can consider all sorts of other things. There are many examinations of conscience. Again, I remind you, we do hear confessions about 20 minutes before every Mass. We're not going to hear them on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day so that I can enjoy the company of all our guests and our people who are visiting and we're getting to see and spend time with over the Christmas holidays. But please feel free up until then to make an appointment, to come 20 minutes before any Mass, to take advantage of that opportunity to make a good confession prior to the Christmas season. Now it's time for Pascal to join us. And he comes down with a very simple but beautiful message. Miserere me, Domine. Have mercy on me, O Lord. When we confess, we're asking for God's mercy and forgiveness, and He always gives it. So miserere me, Domine. Have mercy on me, Lord. Might be a good attitude going into confession, knowing that God always does that. God bless. Have a great week. And don't forget, all the Masses this weekend, December 11th and 12th, are here at the church.